Hello, malt mates. Ralphie in the bothy, the whisky bothy, the one and only, somewhere in the middle of the Irish Sea, and welcome to Ralphie Review 1074 Extras. Extra content, extra opinion, extra narrative, extra engagement, extra perspective, extra rants now and again. But this, what I'm going to say to you now, it could be construed as a quiet rant. But it's something that we all experience at some point in our whisky journey. And it happens intermittently. And it's what's called whisky fatigue. So let me explain it. Let me put it into perspective for you. We start off with our first glass of whisky that we actually have straight. We probably have it in a tumbler. And we've fished out the ice because someone said that you don't taste the whisky properly when it's cold. And suddenly you realise at room temperature, with just a few drops of water in it, the whisky you're tasting is far more eventful and aromatic and communicative. And this is when we get our first acquaintance. It develops from there because we go out and we buy a bottle. And we might share it with friends, but there are times we're drinking alone on our own, which is perfect company, because it creates the perfect reflective mood. It creates an environment of calm ambience, which is the perfect environment to enjoy a whisky. And you find that you're enjoying the moment, but you're not drinking to get drunk. You're drinking for the quality, not the quantity, and the result is that even though you've had a few drinks, you're not typically generically drunk. You buy another bottle, something else, or something similar, and then you have conversations about whisky with friends, and then one of your friends happens to be like-minded. And then you start bigger conversations, and then you go to a whisky event, a whisky festival. You buy your ticket, you turn up, you've been online, you've seen what these people with bonnets and jackets and experience have got to recommend to you, and you say, right, I'm going to have plenty to eat before I go to the whisky festival, and I'll make sure I have my bottle of water to keep me hydrated, and I will focus and be tactical, going around the tables to focus on quality. And I'll ask people around me, what do they recommend? Because you very quickly find there's a consensus. People share good whiskies in the whisky scene. And you'll find that people are looking for at these events, because you don't see much from the big players, and if you do see bottlings, it tends to be the generic travel retail style bottlings and not a lot else. And then you find the smaller distilleries and independent bottlers, and for the first time you're bamboozled and bewildered because there's so much variety, and you just can't believe how one single malt can taste so different between bottlings, depending on the casks used for maturation, whether American oak or European oak or Bourbon X sherry, port, Madeira. There's so many permutations, and wee buzzes of excitement go around mezcal matured offerings, because there's novelty there, and people want to talk about the novel stuff. And you learn, suddenly your learning curve starts to get steeper. And this is where you're no longer buying your whisky in a supermarket or getting someone to buy generic whiskies for you as a birthday present, for example. You're buying for yourself and your own palate. You build a rapport, if it's worth building, with a local specialist retailer who will charge a little bit more because of their ongoing overheads and costs and business tax and all the rest of it. But the trade-off is that you get much more information, and you start to find bottles that other people are not talking about because they haven't picked up on them yet. So a new release, a run of releases from an independent bottler, and the retailer, of course, wants to sell their whisky and they want positive talk about it and conversation about it. So they give you good recommendations, and you look at the price and you say, these independent bottlers, for the strength of alcohol, they're offering pretty good value here. Because you've got the experience now to make the comparison. And then you pour that whiskey you've bought, and then you put it side by side with the whiskies you started with. And things have changed. Your palate has matured. You've grown more experience, and a lot of that experience is actually subconscious, although we're consciously engaged in the experience of smelling and tasting whiskey. The reason for that is simple, malt mates. Survival. Ancestors, human ancestors, needed, as a matter of life or death, to know if something smelled rotten, or was contaminated, or was poisonous, or was not consumable as food. They needed to know. If they got it wrong, they died. Food poisoning, herbal poisonings. There's so many plants out there that are dangerous. That's the thing about the natural world. And to a certain extent in the modern world, we're given the illusion of safety. But we carry on loading up our palate with these higher strength, fully flavoured, engaging and exciting bottlings that we can now source. And it's not just whiskey, it could be bourbons, it could be rums. Because we're looking at the online retailers and the phenomenal range of bottlings from around the world that they make available to us. And then at some point, one evening, not any particular time of the year, not any particular occasion, we pour a glass of whatever we're pouring, and we sit back in our habitual little space that we've got in our house, and we nose the whiskey, and you think, well, hang about, that's odd, not a lot happening. And then you taste it, and it just tastes flat and sour. And this is you having your first round of palate fatigue. Palate fatigue will creep up on you and hit suddenly without warning. You're so whiskified that the brain is so fed up, constantly analysing and appraising the experiences, that it just shuts down and says, no, I'm not interested. So what do we do then? We have a holiday. We take time out. And at that point, we're accruing more knowledge, we're accruing more experience, and we've bought a nostalgic bottle and found that it's actually a bit disappointing because our palates are so much more sensitive than they used to be. And when we're starting out, we tend to just basically gloss over the flaws and problems that can occur in a whiskey from bad maturation or poor production quality, because we don't have comparisons. And then the better whiskies give us very direct, immediate and emotional, tangible comparisons, because the brain works emotionally. So we buy something that's 40% heavily chill filtered, and you think, whatever I paid for it, I paid too much, because it's not much of an event. It's not a bad whiskey, but it's just not working. And frankly, when a whiskey doesn't work, it's still a bad whiskey, no matter how well it's been made. This can be either over distillation or too much cask influence. There can be a number of reasons. But it's the discussion with friends, particularly in a whiskey club, particularly when we're communicating online and we're in forums, and people are asking better and better quality questions, and the better quality answers are out there immediately because there's so much personal and interpersonal communication going on way beyond the limitations of a traditional whiskey club. And at this point, we hear about new whiskey festivals. We hear about exciting unicorn bottlings surrounding and pertaining to certain festivals. Or we hear suddenly that someone has bought this completely off-the-radar bottling from an unusual and probably a fairly new independent bottler, and they're absolutely raving about it because it's so phenomenally and fantastically good. So that's another factor that creeps in. And so if we're strategic and careful, and also depending on our physical location in the world, we can soon have incredible access to an awful lot more options than ever used to exist, even 20 or 30 years ago. It's a different landscape. And then we notice, because we're starting to do forensic, we've got our palate back, we're moving forward now, we're building an experience, and our primary mission is to avoid bad buys, to avoid misspending money. That's the challenge. So we keep a list. What we bought for the year, how much we spent, we add up our average scores over the year and divide it by the money we spent to get the equation of value for money. What was the value for money? Is it a lower number, which means better value for money, or a higher number, which means it was just more expensive for what you enjoyed? There's little analytical, tactical things we can do, and they are quite helpful. We can also set ourselves challenges to explore sherried whiskies, to have a run in peated whiskies if we've got the palate for it. So again, this is us growing our experience and addressing and practicing to address the fact that we are increasingly subject to the law of diminishing returns. The more we experience whisky, the more we engage and connect with whiskies, a tremendous variety of whiskies in all sorts of circumstances, whether at festivals or on our own or with friends, we just get better at it. And we get better understanding and defining and understanding what really, really is a good whisky and what just isn't. What's all smoke and mirrors? What's all synthetic narrative? What is, for example, just a mass-produced, non-event product because of the policy and philosophy of the manufacturer? We need to understand that. I was asked a question recently, really interesting question, by one of my Patreon subscribers, and someone that's quite active in my Patreon Discord channel, was saying, Ralphie, is there a way of calculating your investment returns of satisfaction with a whisky so as that you can improve year on year the selectiveness of what you buy and what you pay? And to a certain extent, it's called the malt grind. We all do it to a certain extent. It's just how enthusiastic and geeky are we to just constantly improve our knowledge and perspective and awareness and our purchasing decisions. But I would also suggest that something that's important to stop the palate fatigue and to help us to continue to develop is to challenge our palate now and again. And this is why I recommend, say, rather than sticking to Scotch whisky, try a rum, try some Armagnac, try a small craft produced bourbon. Forget your Jim Beam, forget your Jack Daniels, forget even your Heaven Hill. It's not so much the quality of the bourbon, it's just the way it's presented, the way it's filtered, the way it's homogenized and industrialized. And this is where we really need to be looking more closely at the small fledgling craft distilleries in the USA. That's where the real excitement is. But it's harder to get those bottles, but not impossible. So we set ourselves a challenge. I'm just going to spread the net a little bit here. I'm just going to explore further. I might not like all the experiences, but using my existing experience and talking to my rum friends in the rum scene who know a lot more about rum than whiskey drinkers do, it's amazing how you can latch in to some genuinely fascinating and authentic alternative experiences, which in turn tend to refreshen our palate for when we come back to whisky. And that's all I have to say for the moment, malt mates. See you soon.